What's up, guys? Thanks for watching. Would appreciate a like, subscribe, comment down below. Would love to see you engage, and thanks for watching. So the big idea with this episode, and the big idea with all of this, it's not just to hone in on Zionism specifically, even though I'm going to hone in on Zionism specifically here. It is to say, as a holistic, generalized concept, that this broad collectivism that we're seeing both from the left and now increasingly from the right on the question of Israel and Zionism and all these things is wrong. It's inherently anti-American. It's anti-individualist. It's anti-Christian, by the way, which is why Christian Zionism is especially bad. We're going to get to those guys in a second. But it's just like any Isterism, just as I mentioned. It's just like anti-Semitism. It's just like racism. It's just like sexism. It's just like anything. It is a bigotry on behalf of another group towards another group of people. And just because we've been psyoped into believing it doesn't mean that we have to see that that's what this is. Oh, Zionism is different. I once heard, I think it was Andrew Klavan say on a podcast once that, that anti-Semitism is different than any other form of hatred. And I've heard, and Douglas Murray had the whole argument about it's anti-Semitism is a shape-shifting form of hatred. It's like, well, not really. You're an anti-Semite if you hate Jews. And you're a Zionist if you believe in the superiority of the Jewish race. That's kind of how this plays out. That's what this is. It's very simple, actually. Hatred is very simple to understand. You're a group, and you don't like a group because of some certain immutable characteristic. It's not a critique on merit. It's not a critique on anything you do to make yourself smarter or a better person or anything like that. It is a critique based on guilt and collectivism. It is a form of social control. That's all this is. It is a form of social control meant to dissuade all of us from actual truth on any given issue. And by the way, I'm talking about Zionism here, and it's going to be an uncomfortable conversation for some people, but it's just like the inverse. It's just like anti-Semitism. Anti-Semites feel the exact same way as the Zionists do, only that way is aimed at a different group, the opposite group in this case. Racists feel the same way, sexists feel the same way, misogynists feel the same way, everybody feels the same way. So the big thing that I want to let everybody know and give everyone maybe the permission to do is to not let people distract you. Do not let someone say that, because it's towards a certain issue, because it's about black people or white people or Catholics or Mexican people or, Hindus or something, that it's not inherently wrong. It is inherently wrong. Zionism is wrong. Just as all forms of ethnic, racial superiority, gender superiority, religious superiority are, political superiority are. This is a psyop that is being run over the American citizen right now. It is a psyop that is being run, and it's being run with targeting value-driven people to get them to go crazy over any and all of these situations. So the big thing we need to get right from the jump is that Zionism, like all other ists or isms, name your one, and it's exactly like that one, I guarantee you, is wrong. And we cannot let it persist in a country where we have values as the forefront, in a culture where we have values as the forefront. Because when you get divorced from values and you start saying, this group is more superior than this just because they have this thing about them that they can't control, they can't change. That is the route to genocide. That's the route to communist dictatorship. That's the route to totalitarianism. It's everything bad comes from collective guilt. Nothing has happened because of collective guilt that is good, ever. And we need to call it out as such. And this rising tide of wild Zionism that we're seeing is exactly the same way. And anyone who says that it's not the same and that, it's different because of X, Y, and Z is not a serious person. You should not listen to them. And the first reason why this is taking place and why Zionism is wrong is because it is wrong to put any group on a pedestal. Any group. Men, women, white people, Republicans, Marxists, Chinese people, whoever. Name your group of person. Because no group is inherently special based on their fundamental immutable characteristics. No group is special just because they have a certain quality about them, because of the level of melanin count in their skin, because they come from a certain area of the world, because they have a different chromosome than someone else. That does not make you inherently, it makes you different. And we should acknowledge that and see that and kind of accommodate for that when we need to. But to say that you're inherently above or below somebody else, like that's the Indian caste system. Like that's how that works. You are low, you are dirty. That's the old, there were a lot of customs in this is in Jewish culture, this is in a lot of other cultures, where people were unclean. That was a lot of things that happened, it's in the, you were unclean if you were a part of a certain group of people. If you did certain things, you're unclean. And that's not right. It's horrible to say that someone is dirty or less than or dehumanize them just because you say that they're a different, because they're a different thing that they're not. And so and the reason why people do this, I think why people succumb to collectivism is because they feel inadequate about themselves. There's a large amount of inadequacy there. There's a large projection of, I don't feel good enough, so I'm going to make someone else not feel good enough. It's why this is exactly true, because collectivism is bullying from a group perspective. And so this is why bullies do what they do. Bullies do what they do because they feel inadequate about themselves. Like, oh my gosh, my dad hits me, so I'm going to take my anger out on, this kid at school. Oh my gosh, like my mom drinks too much, so I'm going to go, slam this girl on social media and post a bunch of pictures about her that are photoshopped or something like that. It's the same exact thing. And the ultimate solution to all of this, and the solution to collectivism and Zionism, is to view people as individuals, not as collectivist groups, in both good and bad ways. Like the amount of people that have been called, self-hating Jews because they're critical of Israel. Dave Smith, Glenn Greenwald, Max Blumenthal, etc. I don't agree with those guys on everything. Obviously, I don't agree with anyone on anything. And I think it's honestly concerning if you do agree with someone on everything. But the amount of hatred and this is, by the way, this is exactly how this happens, is that the people who are pushing whatever Isterism it is, they're most critical towards the people that are a part of that group that don't go along with the narrative. This happened with the rising racial tension we had up until the Summer of Love in 2020, where Jason Whitlock or Candace Owens or Brandon Tatum were called like self-hating black people, or Uncle Toms or coons or whatever. And it's disgusting, obviously, just because someone thinks Carol Swain, thinking Shelby Steele, Thomas Sowell, it's absurd and ridiculous. And, because we need to view people as individuals, because when we don't do this, it leads to discrimination, actual discrimination on the bad end towards people that actually think different and think for themselves and don't go along with the narrative, or undue elevation on the top end. This is like the, Jewish people can do no wrong, black girl magic, like whatever the case might be. Chauvinistic masculinity, boss babe, elevated female culture, all that kind of stuff. And so people should not be elevated because of immutable characteristics. They should not be denigrated because of their immutable characteristics. They're neutral things, and we should treat them as neutral things. And the second reason why all of this Isterism, collectivism is wrong, why Zionism is wrong, is that it damages, after this takes place, it damages honest dialogue. Because when someone, or something rather, gets elevated as sacred, as above everything else, you can't criticize that thing, how dare you go and you say this thing, whatever. It becomes like anything in power. Anything. Because the powerful thing in any given structure, once it achieves power, it becomes, if it becomes corrupt, which a lot of power structures obviously corrupt themselves, they become desperate to silence any critique or criticism against the thing, the institution, the person, whatever, the cultural movement is in power. And I should be fair, and I've been guilty of this, so I need to repent for a lot of this as well. We should not criticize people for no reason. We should have a reason for our critique. Like, if you're going to say something sucks, say why that something sucks. If you hate something, say why you hate something. If you don't like something, say that you don't like something. But don't just say, and this is where actual bigotry comes in, I hate X group of people because of no reason. This is why I'm so critical of Nick Fuentes. I hate Jews, black people, whatever. Why? You have no reason for that. He's given no reason for that. because the white man is superior, the white race is superior. Like it's such garbage. That's why Fuentes isn't an honest actor at the end of the day. He's not a true Christian. He doesn't have a biblical worldview from that sense. And none of these people do when they, no matter what cause, like Mark Levin does not have that worldview of people. Clearly, just look at his X feed. And this is how our ruling class has been able to get away with this so much, is because we have not had an honest dialogue about criticizing our leaders. And we should have been critical of our leaders far more and held them to a higher standard and higher level of accountability. And yet they've just robbed and pillaged the country for the last 30, 60, whatever years. And now we are in trouble because of that. That's how we got Trump. That's how we got Mamdani. That's how we're getting all of these people. It's from that essence. It's the exact same reason why, no one can come to terms with all of this stuff at the back end of everything. And so that's why a lot of this stuff is kind of going in the direction that it is, because there are many, many things that, people don't have a grip on, and we should be able to be honest about that. And the last thing, really, at the end of the day, is that it is wrong to hold a group in special esteem apart from your merit. The only way this is, I think honestly, I've been asked what when I teach and when I, do all the stuff when, with biblical teaching or whatever, like when someone asks me about like, hey, what does this mean? What does that mean? Whatever. When one of my small group guys, when someone in my church asks me whatever, the parable of Jesus that I think is always the best one to start with is the parable of the fig tree, or the example of the fig tree. He tells a parable about the fig tree. So, for those who don't know the story, Jesus is walking out of Jerusalem. This is the week he's going to be crucified with his disciples. And he goes upon a fig tree. And he goes over and he's hungry and he wants to get a fig out of the fig tree. And he goes over and he looks for a fig and he doesn't find one. But on the outside, it had a lot of leaves. It looked like it was in season, etc. And Jesus does one thing inside of that story that he never does throughout the entire rest of the Bible, which is that he kills something. He kills the fig tree. He curses the fig tree. And he says, may no fruit ever come out of you again. And the next day it dies. And so when the disciples were like, whoa, this guy is all about life and caring for things and stewardship and everything like that, like why is he doing this? And the answer that Jesus gives, the correct answer for all of this, is that you judge a tree by its fruits. You judge a tree by its fruits. You judge a tree not by the tree itself, because the tree itself might be beautiful and might look in season. He gives another example when he was rebuking the Pharisees of, you remind me of whitewashed tombs, but on the inside, you're full with death and uncleanness and everything. You might look great on the outside, but on the inside, you suck. And basically, he says the same thing in retrospect here when he says that the tree might be fine, but what it produces, if it is not fine, then the tree has no use. So the only way you can properly judge something is by what it produces. So if you cannot talk about the fruit of the tree and just insisting on talking about the tree itself, you damage the root of everything. And this is to say, and thank God for this, no one is inherently special. No one is. No one is special. There are no sacred cows. No one is better than someone because of X, Y, and Z reason that they can't control. No one is worse than someone because of X, Y, Z reason they can't control. Because no group of people deserves to be elevated above the other group of people. It's not right. It's like I said, it's anti-American, it's anti-Western, it's anti-Christian, and we should avoid doing that. And everything that has happened for a poor reason has happened because of some type of this thing happening. Collectivism is a poison, and we need to avoid it at all costs.